So let's take a look at the first of several trivial examples. This one is the hello world, and it's all implemented in a single file, right? I try to create the absolute simplest example of Redux. Okay, so here's a diagram that more or less explains the different players. Right here, we're going to have a state, right, that's going to be generated by a reducer, and the state is just going to be a simple message, right, represented as a JSON object that says the message is hello. So it's the only state, and the state won't change, right? It has a static, just simple state of the message being hello. That's going to be fed into the store. We'll see how to create a brand new store, and the store will be provided to the rest of the React application. Is going to be glued here, and the provider is going to provide that state eventually to a container. Right, there's going to be a React component, and the React component's responsibility is to map the state that is being provided through the state, right, by Redux, map it to the property of some component that will be responsible for rendering that state, right? So here's our component that receives a property, whose responsibility is to render this property, maybe as a H1 or whatever. Okay, so this will be a dumb functional component, just a simple pure function that's going to take a property and is going to be provided by the container that wraps that component and maps the state that is coming from Redux, and it's mapping it down to the property that the component is expecting. Make sense? So no more will containers or React components will be responsible for maintaining any state. So no this.state, no this.set state anywhere, or none of that, right? That's all going to be handled by Redux. So here's our first line here that obviously we need to import the core React and React DOM libraries, right? And here's the creation of our reducer, right? The first reducer. So basically here we have the state represented as a plain old, JSON object, right? Where we have the state over here just as a static JSON object. It's not changing, right? And the message says that it's hello world, right? Notice that it's wrapped inside of a function. See that? That function is what we're going to refer to as the reducer. The reducer is just a plain old function, right, that calculates what the next state is. It returns, right, when it runs the function, it just says, oh, the next state should be whatever. Right? It comes back with some JSON object. Right now, this function is calculating that the state is always that the message is hello world. Yes? Right? So this reducer, this function, it's a pure JavaScript function, right? It can take two arguments, which are not listed here. The arguments are the previous state and the events that the user generated, right? But since we don't have any buttons, we don't have anything, it's always going to generate the same JSON state object. Okay, the create store function is from the core Redux library. So the core Redux library creates the store out of the reducer. The reducer function generates a stream of state objects, right? As you interact with it, as you delete, as you add, as you modify things, right? As you generate a stream of events, as you interact with the application, the function, the reducer, generates a stream of states, transitioning the application from one state to the next. Make sense? Right? And what gets rendered is just the application, going into a next state. Right? Maybe you remove something or you added something, and then you see more content or less content as you interact with it. Yes, right. And so as you generate new events, it calculates the new state and it puts it in the store. The store contains all the states that ever generated, right? And we could say, and by default, we always care about the latest event, the latest state, right? The very latest state. Okay, so the store. The store keeps track of all the possible states. And eventually, that state needs to be rendered somewhere, right? and presumably it will be rendered by this really trivial hello component that is expecting some data. It's a dumb component. It's not maintaining any of its states. Somebody's going to tell it, hey, this is the data that I want you to render. Right? And we call it here hello property. So somehow this state that is being stored here in the store eventually needs to come down all the way down to this component. Make sense? Right? So the mapping between the two, right, between the state that is being generated by the store and the rendering will be the responsible for that will be the container, the hello container. The container's responsibility is to connect, right? Connect the states generated that are in the store and mapping it to properties that the component is expecting, right? So notice that here we have a connect function. Connect function is part of the React Redux library, right? This is the glue part, right? This is the library, right? The Redux library that glues together the Redux framework with the React framework, right? And the way it does it is through this function called connect, right? Which kind of captures the whole essence here. That when I'm trying to connect the state that is being generated by the store, I'm going to pass it to you. I'm going to pass it to you as an argument, as a function. I'll pass you the state, and then the container responsibility is to say, okay, well, how do I map, right, this state over here in the store? How do I map it to properties that the component needs to render? Right. So basically, it just returns a map that says, hey, I'm gonna extract from the state. I'm gonna extract from the state whatever value I need, and I'm gonna map it into the property that the component is expecting. So it takes as argument. Notice the component, the hello component. So it's gonna pass the hello component. It's gonna invoke the hello component with passing it the hello property, whose value is going to be extracted from the state, right? So its responsibility, the container, is to extract data from the state and map it to the properties that the component is expecting, right? And finally, to top it out, we have another glue element, right, called the provider, right, that finally lives at the top level of the React application, right, and it provides the store that maintains all the state, and it provides it down to all the children containers that you might have. Here we have just one container, right, the hello container, and it feeds the store all the way into all the containers so that it calls all the containers, passing it through the connect function, passing it the state, and then the containers decide what to extract from that state and pass it along into the component. Okay. Again, this is the most trivial example. Let's demo it here. Let's bring up terminal. Let's see, where are we? Webdev, and let's go to 2019 and go into fall. And in here, let's create a trivial example here, and what do we call it? Right, the hello redux. All right, so create React app hello redux. Okay, so that's gonna create our boilerplate React application. Nothing magical about it. It'll take a bit to copy down the template React application, and we can just run it easily by cd into the hello redux and just saying npm run. So nothing magical about that. We will be installing two new libraries, right? The Redux and the React Redux libraries, right? That implement the core functionality of the Redux library plus the glue that glues both frameworks. While that's happening, let's see, what else do we need here? We'll bring up the IDE in a minute. Okay, taking a while. All right, so happy hacking. Let's if we go in there in the hello redux, we can do an npm run, npm start. This is going to kick off the application and navigate to the index page, right? And just say you can now start hacking away. Excellent. All right, so let's add now both libraries. The let's see, I think I have one too many here. The Redux and the React Redux. So let's say npm. We'll do npm install Redux, and don't forget to do the -- save. And we'll need also the React Redux. npm install React Redux, save. All right, so while that's happening, let's open up the application with our favorite IDE. Let's see, let's close this, and let's open up the example we just created. Let's see, under webdev 2019 fall hello Redux. There we go. So let's open that up. And let's see, we have it running somewhere. Where do we have it running? Not here. Probably here. This is it, right? So let's move this into its own. There we go. Let's put this side by side. All right, excellent. So just to make sure that we are in the right place, we'll do a public in the source app.js. And app.js, I'm just gonna blow away most of the content and say hello. All right, so it says hello. All right, that says hello. All right, so we're in there. Make sense? All right, excellent. So let's create that simple, trivial example that we have that we showed you earlier. Hello one. Let's copy a couple of things here. So we have that. We have this already, right? Let's see. We already have this. We have React DOM. Actually, we already have the app. The app is already being rendered inside of index in the root, so we don't have to do that. What else do we need? Let's see. We need a store. So let's load that. There's our here's a create store. Let's create our actual store. Paste it in there. And this we might perhaps generate and say this is a const reducer as a function. Is this right? So we could do that. This is a little more. Makes a little more sense. This takes as argument the reducer. So basically, the reducer is just a function. It's just a function that calculates the next state, the next JSON object. Right? And right now, it's always returning the same thing. It's always returning that one JSON object. And the store just takes as an argument the reducer, and it gives you the store. Okay. Next, we create the actual component that we want to render. Right, so here's the actual component, and we could totally render this, right? We could say we could use it right now. We could say hello component, and we can pass it the hello property equal hi from React Redux, right? And that should render, and it didn't. What? Did I not close something? Oh yeah, I think I've closed this. There it is. So hi from React Redux. Right. So no magic there. Nothing new. Absolutely nothing new. Right. What we want to be able to do here is that instead of me providing data, I wanted to be able to grab it from this message here in the state. All right. So to do that, we need to do some plumbing. Right. And again, this is where you need to just practice, see the pattern, and then it becomes trivial. All right. So the plumbing. Here's the plumbing. The plumbing is that we need a container, right? And we'll create here a container. And the container, what it does is that somebody is going to instantiate this container, is going to call the connect function on that container, is going to pass it the state that is in the store, and the container is going to be responsible for grabbing whatever data from the state and then mapping it to the property that the hello component is expecting. Notice the hello component is expecting this hello property as an argument, right? So that's going to be done here programmatically by the container, right? So to do that, we need the connect. The connect is declared in the other library. So import in the glue library, so React Redux library. Right? And finally, the last piece of the glue is that we need a provider around all this. So instead of we're going to have a provider here, a provider that takes in as argument the store. Oops. A provider that is also lives in the glue library here. Provider, there it is. That takes into the store. You need to tell it what the store instance is, and you wrap your entire application that needs to access that state. You wrap it, right, with that provider, and the provider will just will find all the containers, right, and provide the store from where they can retrieve the data that they need. Okay, so here, instead of using the component, we'll use the containers, the hello containers, which is going to grab the information from the state and then feed it to all the components that need those properties, right? And there it is, this hello world, right? The hello world is from where? From the state, that message. Make sense? Right? So if I change the state, hello world, from Redux, right? Then the state changes to that whatever I put that state. Make sense? Right? So that's it. That's all Redux is. Right? Everything else is making this scalable. Right? Instead of having everything in one single file, we're going to break it up into multiple files. All right. Also, we haven't talked about, well, how do you handle events? Right? We haven't talked about that. Also, here, a reducer is always generating the same state. Well, how do we encode here logic? How do we create a finite state machine that says, hi, hey, you're in this state and this is the event. How do you transition to the next event? We need to flesh this out. We need to implement the finite state machine in here. All right, so we need to do that. Also, notice the container. You see that this is a function. The connect takes as argument a function. The function takes the state and then it returns a map. Takes the state and it returns a map. Yes? We often refer to that function as the state mapper or state to property mapper function. The function that maps the state to the properties. That's exactly what it's doing, right? It's mapping something that's in the state and it's mapping it to some property. So that has a jargon a concept called the state to property mapper. All right. All right. So we'll flesh that out also. Again, all what's left is just fleshing this out so that it's scalable, it's general, and we can build something that is much more complex than just a plain old hello world. Everybody okay? All right, let's do it.